Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a series of webinars by the Etteplan Group. I would like to remind you about the current, but also the upcoming webinars during April and May. Last week, my colleague Guido Abbenhuis started with the transformation of technical documentation. Where he more or less looked into, let's say, the more content, how we as a company looking at and envision the future of technical documentation. Today, I would like to discuss with you our view on how you as an organization, and especially in the industry manufacturing environment, can level up your information or technical information maturity. So that will be a more, let's say, organizational and transformational conversation today. And then in May 7th, my colleague Pim Becker will give you a bit more digital and technology context about user-centric content. And then on the 14th, Manuel will provide more specific input on service and parts information, where also digital will be a large part of the conversation. So my name is Guido Abbenhuis. I'm director within Etteplan Central Europe for the TDS business unit, so Technical Documentation Solutions. And I'm heading up today's webinar, in which I would like to give you a view on information maturity. Topics that I will pass by is industry changes and impact on technical information. Then also a view on how we see technical information in the future. And then especially, and that's I think the most relevant question, how to increase your technical information maturity and what are the aspects, dimensions, elements of this transformation. By the way, before I go into the details, I would like to suggest that if you have questions along the way, that you put that in the chat box, and then will come back on that at the end of the conversation, and then I will choose some that I can answer right away. So if you have a question, please post them in the chat box. So first of all, what we see in the industry is more or less this ecosystem. Also, my colleague Leo in the last webinar has referenced to it, where you see a lot of let's say industry manufacturing companies that are more or less an OEM. So they produce either a part, an installation, or a piece of a full process that in the end is being managed by the asset owners. And also on the other hand, you see system integrators that put different elements together as a part of of an integration of a full asset environment. And what we see is that we see a shift in that sense, more and more from, let's say, product features, product capabilities, towards also more asset management elements, and more focus on the usage and the deployment of these products and installations. And that's also, that's of course, this is the main goal of these asset owners, but that's also impacting the way how system integrators and OEMers are looking into that, and not only in the technology that they provide and in the way that technology can connect with data and IoT, but also in the way how they from their services that they offer, so installation, service maintenance, how they deploy those again back to those asset owners. So I think this is more or less the ecosystem in which a lot of things are happening and a lot of changing drivers are coming in. And the main thing is here that the main thing we see is that the usage of assets, I think, is becoming a more dominant aspect in the way how they're being used, but also in the way how they are being developed, and especially in the OEM's side as on the right. Looking into more the information side of things, and this is also a picture that will be coming back, I think, throughout the whole webinar program, is the reflection on the fact that we see that the buzzword Industry 4.0, where a lot of new things can be deployed, like new business models, like new technologies, like new ways of working, of course dominantly digital, also requires a way that you look into information in a different manner. And I don't want to go back to ancient history, but we all recognize that in technical information, in let's say the Industry 0 period, that this was a booklet where you had one format for one owner, one delivery, and one publisher. I think a lot of customers have seen, and a lot of companies have seen that that could be, of course, a lot more efficient, and with that made the step towards a more a structured way of developing and utilizing technical information, where you had multiple information products from a single source, which you then can deploy still as a booklet, but more and more as a PDF or on a web page into a digital in a digital way. And the journey, but not going through the full picture here, but the journey towards, let's say, the 4.0 information phase is in the end that, where we started to come here from a, let's say, more document related, let's say, topic of table of contents related setup of a full technical information document, is that this in the end will become technical information, let's say, components, nuggets, information nuggets that are, in that sense, with the right taxonomy and metadata, are in such a way positioned that they can be automatically triggered by an event or automatically triggered by a sensor-driven data event, or when that is being triggered by automatically, even via let's say chatbots or interactions that are fully digital and automatically. That means that these content elements can be in the end, and that's this is, by the way, not only our vision, this is also being confirmed by the people below in the source title here. But that's the future for technical information, and it's seamlessly triggered with all kind of other parts of information that are coming from all kind of different areas, systems, and processes. And I think that's really a journey that will, in the end, be very important. So to enable yourself to make use of that information in a more future-proof digital way. With that, we have a clear future. We see a clear future of technical documentation, where we see two fundamental shifts. First of all, from, let's say, really product-centric to more user-centric way of creating and publishing and using that technical information. The second shift is that also with that, I think technical information can be seen more as an asset instead of a cost, and I come to that in a second. So some elements of the fact that what we see for the future, how technical documentation and information will look like. It's user-centric. It will be spontaneously triggered instead of having a fixed place in a suitcase or whatever. It's there. It's somewhere in the cloud. It's being triggered spontaneously by context and events. These are what I said, information modules. These can be assembled both by human interface, but also non-human automatically assembled content for that specific context again. It's connected data with products, with things, with IoT, and so on and so on. So you can see here some elements and some characteristics of technical information for the future. And in the end, some highlights here offered at the point of use. So that means also that it's only that information is being shared, what is needed to either do a task or solve a problem. And a dynamic. So here you see what we mean with that is that it's really a split between, let's say, content creation, content management on the one hand, and publication and usage on the other. So that means that, it's updated on the one hand, you structure and you keep on structurally adding new information to it, but in the end, the usage and publication part will be always dynamic based on, again, the context and situation where this information is needed. And with that, you can create information as an asset rather than a cost. That means that in the end, again, information is technical information is not the only source of information. You see here on the right side or let's say the whole full picture is an end-to-end product information flow, where you see that information or data can come from all kind of course, with products, with IoT, but it's when you come at a customer, you need to have the CRM data, you need to have the product and configuration data, you need to have the technical data from the PDM system, of course, the content management system, so where all the technical information is being listed, service data when you want to know, for instance, the service history of that specific customer with that specific configuration product, sorry. And with that, you can compile all kind of information to sell, install, use of, service, and maintain that product or that respective asset. And in the right side, you see more and more that this is being consumed and also published via all kind of different channels. And you see also new abilities with AR, VR, etc. Apps, of course, web, and go on. And that will mean that, you know, if you look at this view, and to make it easy to understand with one clear messages, with as is, what we see happening in a lot of customers is that most of the time all this data is being pushed from, let's say, legacy systems or all kind of, let's say, databases, which is not aligned or integrated, and where in the end a service engineer on the right has to manage all that different information sources with all kind of different information coming out of those systems. And what we also see that most of the time that's losing quite a lot of effective time of that respective engineer by getting the right information to solve the problem that is factually at the point of use at that customer. So that's the as is, and we think that the to be situation will be, and again, this is in line with the information 4.0 perspective that I showed you earlier before, that in the end, this information from all these systems is more and more pulled from those systems by an event, a user in a certain context, where he only wants to have the certain specific task or information to sort out or execute that task. So that's a fundamental shift, and that is really necessary to think about when you want to, let's say, utilize the opportunities in the development of the industry. So with that, you see that when you can ask more or less the question, what is then, how can technical information create additional business value? Now, that's by contributing to these kind of, let's say, reductions or potential challenges that customers have. I have several conversations with middle-sized but also large companies here in the Netherlands, and not the at least once, I would say, where they bump into situations that they have too much second or third amount of visits in service maintenance, or that, you know, that there's no predictive maintenance yet deployed, and in the end that is in the end leading to additional service visits, or indeed service maintenance people are searching for too much or let's say too long for the right information to solve the issue. And you know, these unrealized potential, it's there, it's in a lot of organizations, and definitely you can search for that in your respective company and departments. And this is, you know, the unrealized potential that you could trigger, and of course not only with technical information, because of course there are also other things that you have to look at when you want to have an efficient and optimized way of service maintenance. But the you know, definitely a big component can be that you have the right information in the right context at the point of use. And these are the elements that, and this is a totally different way of discussing technical information than previously. Because previously, and I think we all comply to that, is that, you know, the added value of technical information or tech talk sometimes is seen as a necessity. So we need to comply as companies to directives, standards, and regulation, especially in highly regulated segments like aerospace or defense or medtech. But there is an increasing value of technical information throughout the life cycle of that product or installation. So with let's say a high maturity of technical information, you get could get a shorter time to market through, let's say, product information management. So deploying way easier to for instance, to buy products, to select configurations, etc. If you structurally approach that, that could definitely ease up the shorter time to market. You get higher quality installations and commissioning by the right level of training done by the people who are doing that, or the right training by installing and getting it in operation. You get, of course, effective operator information and training, so to maximize the uptime of the respective product or asset. And in the end, last but certainly not least, also improve the aftermarket business and realize substantial service operations efficiency. So that's a different way of looking at it. It's a fundamental different way where you look in terms of, in the central way, that you try to optimize the way how this asset or respective product is being utilized in the maximum way. So technical information maturity. That's you know the main topic to discuss here, and this is the way how we assess and discuss with our customers about the journey forward. And shortly to give you a background on the different levels, before doing that, I would like to state that you need to more or less follow every step because the one builds on the other. So, and we've stated some levels here. So uncontrolled is more or less that it's not organized. Tech info will be developed as part of another job. Most of the time that's engineering, and it's an end-to-end approach. The one guy does the other than the other. In the second level, you already see that it's a more centralized function. The companies have more or less put that aside or next to an engineering organization and free up without a lot of engineering time and see this as a more specialist task, and with that also increased productivity. The next level is that you optimize that content creation by using component content management systems, the right metadata, the right taxonomy, so that in the end, the content, the technical content is being developed in the most optimum way. And where you also see that here's the fundamental shift, the first shift, I would say, between content creation and also to split that from publication, which is, as I told you earlier, a necessity further down the line. Then in the governed phase, then you try to optimize and reuse the tech info across process and departments, and where you start thinking about the usage of that information. In the integrated level, you connect that with other sources and data, so that in the end, this will be that info will be based on the context of the user. And when it's dynamic, it's automated. It's been triggered and it's automatically processed. And there you really see that tech info has become an information nugget that can be triggered from all kind of situations and systems. And in that sense, we see 3 stages. Stage 0, and it sounds a bit weird, but because we're a tech doc specialist, but documentation is more or less, when you only focus on documentation itself, it's stage 0. Stage 1 is really about information, and stage 2 is about communication, because that's all dynamic interactions. Looking at that also from a business value perspective is in documentation stage 1, you can increase the productivity over your documentation department or the process that you have in documentation. In stage 1, you can increase your operational excellence in the company because you share things. You make use of the fact that the trainer and the service engineer are closely related, or the same content is being used throughout the complete value chain. And in stage 2, you see really improved customer value. Uptime improvement is, of course, there, especially in maintenance, the main game. And you see in that sense, and that's a fundamental shift, which I already discussed, from 2-3 level, you see that fundamental shift to a more user and context-centric perspective on technical information. So what do we see? Now, still, technical information is mostly be seen as a cost and not an asset that can be a critical element in a future digital way of working. So with a lot of companies that are maybe far in stage 0, but still in stage 0 and on the verge to potentially take a next step in creating and using documentation, where it's also been most of the time be approached separately. So installation and maintenance information in R&D, operator information and user training in product management, and also then separately a training department that is also looking into the same, let's say, product and the same content, but then from a really a knowledge transfer perspective. And these are not talking to each other in some cases. And we see luckily some developments there, but I think this is not mainstream. Another very important one when we're talking about the future of industry, and especially Industry 4.0, trying to avoid a bit of that buzzword, but you see that digital initiatives like connectivity, IoT, augmented, virtual, mixed reality are not linked to technical information at all. And I think that's a real big adoption risk, and this will be a showstopper in the future for factually utilizing these day-to-day, or let's say these new technologies in a day-to-day process. If you don't link that to that level of information, because and you see also a lot of pilots that are focused on utilizing the technology, but you need to deploy it in a day-to-day operational process, and that's where the trick is. So if we look at technical information, we assess more or less two things. First of all, the content process. So from content supply, creation, publication, use to feedback, which is a very important one. Don't miss out on that one. And on the technical information capabilities. To what extent is the level? To what extent do you have an information strategy and a management process in place? Do you have clearly, let's say, this content process in place? Do you have it governed? Is there control mechanisms in? How is the organization set up? Do you have a connected organization across multiple silos in your organization? Do you have the right people and skills? Because writing something in a document, in a Word document, which was more or less a manual in the history, and having people to qualify and create information nuggets is a completely different skill set. And of course, which technology are you using and how you approach the road to digital. So with that, we are assessing that more or less. Where are you and where can you go to, and with what kind of, in the end, ultimate goal are you looking into in the way of how you approach this content value chain? And the same is valid for these different capabilities. And that's creating a very factual view on where you are and what steps you can take, and where you also need to prioritize, because that's in the end, the status and the basis for, in the end, a technical information development roadmap. And that's where the partnership comes in, because you need to have multiple steps in a certain sequence, in a certain priority, to get this done. And it's not just having your information up to speed and having it in a CMS. You could say more or less then it starts. And where you have to link that to let's say, steps in your organization to open up, to connect let's say, different silos, to have in the end on the information management part a clear content strategy which you deploy in your organization, and where you also implement, let's say, new digital ways of working, and where you connect it to digital initiatives that are maybe somewhere in other parts of the organization are being looked at. Like robotics is an example, but mainly XR, mixed AR, VR, and IoT. And you see now that a lot of companies are doing that parallel and don't make the connection that much yet. As I already told you, in the end, this such a roadmap gives you also a very clear view on when and how to implement and blend in new digital technologies, which already highlighted, and where there's the possibility to really utilize innovation and optimization throughout the full product lifecycle. You'll see here some examples of digital twin and VR training. So, but this really needs to be addressed on the right management level, because you're not talking only about R&D anymore. You're talking also about after sales and service and maintenance, the usage side, who's using the factual technical information, but also product management, in the sense that especially in the link and in the introduction to customers, and also when you install them at customers, that you have the right portfolio of training services that you can offer, so that in the end they can gain the maximum uptime of that respective product or installation. So that's really important, that you make this a bigger conversation than somewhere down in the R&D or engineering department, where this is becoming is not being seen from a service perspective, for instance. And you see some customers really looking into, or companies looking into that perspective, trying to link the service business together, or very closely in the engineering and R&D cycle, to take in the requirements of the service organization, and with that also the more user perspective, which is in the end will be needed in this development. So really, there's an opportunity to capitalize on the value of your technical information, and I would like to highlight in these crazy times, because otherwise we would have done this in a face-to-face seminar in the Netherlands, but we utilize this now, of course, in a webinar, which is due to the fact that a lot of yourselves probably will be currently at home due to the COVID-19 situation. But especially in these times, when there is disruption and there are limitations in budgets, in cost, in travel, in interactions, also in new developments, and where some companies are really pulling the brakes. This is a fantastic momentum, and I'm interacting more and more with companies that see that there's a momentum to discuss this change in the way you work with technical information, and also to understand that this can be translated into tangible business value. So that's the main message I would like to stimulate again here, that there's an opportunity to look differently at the way the technical information can be used, and that you can gain true business value out of that. So that was my story for today. Hopefully you found it interesting, and I would like to give you the floor for some questions. So I'm looking in the chat box currently. Oh, I got one question in. The question is, how do you approach that with customers? What is the trigger, and how, in the end, what is your experience in the way that when you go through such an assessment, how they make that, let's say, tangible, and then also bring that into motion? Normally we do that with an assessment, and with the end is a workshop to try to get these multiple silos in the company together. And we often see that this is one of the first times that they talk on this subject jointly about these opportunities. So it's not only, let's say, the content itself, it's also by facilitating these kind of conversations, and of course with management support. And I think out of those interactions, most of the time, very nice ideas and come together. And that's not even only because of the fact that we have a certain view and a certain knowledge, but especially also by bringing these people together, of course, in the context of the specific company and product, which generates then new ideas. And then it's just between brackets, let's say, creating that as a kind of roadmap and trying to execute that. Questions is again on next question is on digital technologies, and also in respect of time, let's agree that that's the second, but also immediately the final one. That I mentioned something about the way how new technologies are being deployed. Yeah, what we see a lot is that for instance, AR VR is of course fantastic. It's when you see what's possible, then everybody's jumping on that. And you see either in marketing, but in this reference of this conversation, you see also that it's been a lot of pilots and demos are being started. But most of the time it stops somewhere, and then the people are jumping on the technology and on the fact of buying a license of something, and then start to pilot and do some proof of concepts. But in the end, the main challenge is not only adopt to the technology, but to apply it in the mainstream business. And I think that's where these new initiatives need to be linked in a broader setting and in a wider scope. And that's where you then can create value out of this. So that's the yeah, and that's where we're trying to link that in these kind of conversations, not to push that forward and forget about that for now, but really to trying to make the connection on this, and with that really trying to digitally transform the way you're utilizing your technical information, and also to change the way how knowledge and information is being shared. Okay, what I said was the last question. Thanks for those. I would love to thank you for your attention today in this webinar. Hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know what you think of that. You see my my contact details on the left bottom. So please give me an email or call or whatsoever. And also there's a possibility to get some more information on this view on technical information maturity. Thanks again, and I would like to again invite you for the upcoming 2 seminars on May 7th and May 14th. For now, have a lovely day and a lovely evening, and thanks again for your attention.